Okay, you need to watch the Jared Loeffner videotape. This is a discussion of what you're going to see after you watch it. Jared Loeffner was a community college student, probably the same age as the majority of the people that go to this school. So that puts him to be somewhere between 18 and 22. I'm going to make some assumptions here. He was either schizophrenic from childhood, which I don't know, but I have a pretty good idea he was schizophrenic in high school. The reason I say that is because his parents lived in Tucson and they rented an apartment for him. He had his own car, and in other words, they put him out of the house. Because if you live with a schizophrenic, I have a schizophrenic sister, it's very, very trying on the whole family. And eventually she had to go into an institution because it was too rough. It wasn't that rough on me. I was in college, so I was away. But remember, if you're going to get schizophrenia, it's a high likelihood you're going to get it between the ages of 17 and 27, a 10-year span. Of course, you could have it for a long time. When I worked at the mental hospital, I worked with children who were schizophrenic and had other problems as well. So yes, you can have childhood schizophrenia, and those who don't do well often end up in a hospital setting. So his parents set him up in an apartment because it's very likely they were just tired of dealing with him. It's unknown, at least by me, whether they knew he was paranoid or not. When you watch the video, you will see him say lots of things which tells you that he suffers from delusions of disorganized thinking. A lot of what he says is reality-based, which is not unusual. He does have some delusional stuff about money, and he talks about that and repeats that. There's a time where he sees one of his professors. I think it's an English professor. And he says something to him, he yells at him. And the guy keeps walking. And he starts talking to himself. And he says something along the lines, yeah, that's my English teacher who gave me a D or gave me a failing grade or something, gave me a C or something. And he goes on about how faculty are oppressing and the money they get paid with is illegal. And, who knows? Did he get a C from this guy and he thought he should have gotten an A? I don't know. We don't know. But it's probably true that was his professor, and it's probably true he didn't get the grade he wanted. And then he walks around, he talks about the bookstore, and talks about some other things. He walks by the little eating area, he sees a microwave in there and says, yeah, that's a microwave I'm going to have to use when I'm homeless. So you can see he's thinking ahead. Then he's all hung up on grammar. The grammar. People don't use correct grammar. He doesn't use correct grammar. But he's in his mind, he's got a lot of delusions going on. It's not clear that he's really got some scary paranoid things going on. What he ends up doing, of course, is he decides he's going to kill Gabby Giffords, the U.S. representative from Arizona, from his area. So he gets a gun, which suggests he never went to a mental institution, never got diagnosed with schizophrenia. Very easy for him to have a family doctor give him some antipsychotic medication. Maybe he was on it, maybe he wasn't. But he did a lot of planning. And one of my pet peeves is people who think that people who can talk like I am talking right now, and I'm going to go do this afternoon, and tomorrow I'm going to do this. People who can talk, make sense, make plans, they're not mentally ill because you heard them talk about these things. Well, that's crazy. You just watched 4 mentally ill people, and they were talking fine. Some of them were showing you their delusional sides. Some weren't. In the video with Jared, he shows his delusional sides. There was a woman, one of his fellow students, an older student, like in her 50s, went back to community college to get a degree after raising her children. And she said, she wrote a message to one of her friends. She said, I went to math class today, and my professor was standing up in the front, and he was passing out the syllabus. And as he gave the syllabus to this guy named Jared, Jared goes off on him and starts saying things like, what gives you the right to teach? You're using illegal money under the First Amendment. And he just starts rattling off his schizophrenic thinking. Of course, everybody in the class is like mortified. This lady goes home, types a long email to her friend, and says, this guy is crazy. I'm afraid he's going to come to school and kill us. Well, how long does it take for you to be with a person who is suffering from schizophrenia and is either on medication and it's not working, or they're not on medication and they start talking like this? It doesn't take very long at all. So there were plenty of students, plenty of faculty that knew he was mentally ill. Doesn't mean that he was dangerous, but nobody did anything to help him. When I was at the Valle Verde campus about 5 years ago, there's a guy who used to get out of class and wait for the bus, I guess, that came by. And the first time I walked by him, he was just having this huge conversation with himself, just babbling, delusional. So I broke that conversation up with him. I started talking to him. And immediately when I started talking to him, he came back to reality and started talking to me like any of you who talk to me right now. But while he was by himself waiting, he couldn't, kind of like the delusional guy that thought people were going to kill him, he couldn't keep it together. So that was his time to let it out. Nobody was around him anyway. It wasn't bothering anybody. It wasn't in class. So it's hard. It's hard for them because they're fighting these impulses. And it's hard for us because we can't have somebody in class battling along and saying things and doing things. I think I'll end with the beginning of our discussion about James Storms, Joker. He had his master's in neuroscience. He was a hell of a smart guy. He got into the PhD program at the University of Colorado. Got a girlfriend, was doing well, and then he started becoming unwound with schizophrenia. Now, what's sad about it, it's sad enough that that was happening to him, but what's even more sad is all the people that he worked with knew about psychology. He's in the neuroscience program. And so when he started babbling about stuff in class and faculty was confronting him, they finally took it to the program director and they pulled him in and they said, look, James, you got some issues going on here. You got one of two choices. You can either leave the school or you can consent to going into weekly mental health treatment. And if you do that, you can stay in school. So he said, okay, I'll go see somebody. And who does he go see? The head of the department, who's a psychiatrist. which I think is a conflict of interest, but that's just me. So she sees him, and he starts talking about, I've been getting ideas about dressing up like the Joker and going down to the movie theater and shooting people. Now, does that on his face make him dangerous? Does that on his face make the clinician have to report this to somebody? It's a close call. She goes the extra step, calls in another psychiatrist from a different school or private practice who allegedly has experience with criminal schizophrenia. She asked James whether he would mind if another clinician came in and sat in on the therapy session. He said, no, that's fine. So the guy comes in, sits in on 3 sessions, and the 2 doctors get together and decide not to commit him to the hospital for an evaluation. So, you know the rest of the story. Holmes goes in his dormitory and starts making a video. No, that's I'm getting my 2 guys confused. No, Holmes just tells her this is what he's going to do. The lieutenant in the police department goes to the psychiatrist and says, hey, doc, do you think we should commit him? We'll pick him up and take him to the local hospital and have him committed. She says no. And then, of course, he goes in on his shooting spree and kills all those people in the movie theater. And people again said, well, he's not. In fact, the DA charged him with first-degree murder and wouldn't let him plead guilty to murder and take the death penalty off the choice for the district attorney. All those people shot, all those people killed, and the stupid DA wanted his glory to prosecute James Holmes, who was clearly mentally ill, clearly under the influence of his mental illness when he did the shooting. He didn't want to get off scot-free, not guilty by reason of insanity. He just wanted to plead guilty to the murders. He would have spent the rest of his life in prison anyway. But the stupid prosecutor wanted his ounce of punishment. So he said, no, I'm not taking the death penalty off. So they spent $12 million on a prosecution, and the jury said he's guilty, but no death penalty. So after $12 million in making all those live victims, whether they were shot or family victims of dead people, go through a horrible trial, he ended up where James Holmes was willing to go from the very beginning, which was plead guilty, pay the punishment. So you can have skilled, very highly skilled faculty, professionals, whatever, and still get the issue done. To me, James Holmes is not a hard issue. Jared Locker was not a hard issue either. But people, hindsight's 20/20. But at least the lieutenant in the police department knew the right thing to do, but the doc didn't want to do it. So she didn't do it on her own, which is understandable. So, and we'll talk about Cho, who's the guy I was about to talk about. Got him confused. His is horrible situation as well. But we'll talk about it on Thursday. All right. Thank you for coming back. Glad you made it back. Hopefully you had a great, relaxing Thanksgiving. We got one more exam, and we're done.